I was on a networking meeting this morning and it suddenly dawned on me that it's 9/11, and it took me back to that time. Is it 24 years ago or 25 years ago? I knew exactly where I was. I was at work. I was on a call to a client, and her husband was a trader, and she was relaying to me what was happening in New York, and it was all so poignant. It was all happening really fast, and it was all very relevant because my boss at the time was skipping around the showroom, and was getting all excited because the following week he was going to New York for a holiday. And anyway, as our conversation went on, she said a plane had hit one of the towers. And then we carried on talking. She was talking to me whilst her husband was talking to her and relaying what was happening. And then she said there was another tower being hit by a plane, and everything was just so surreal. But the next thing we did was, we got a TV at work, and I told my boss what was happening, and we were all just glued. And I mean, everybody's got their own story to tell about that moment, but and I've just been reading reports about children who were 5 years old at that time, who were in the playground or in the school and were looking out the window of their classroom and saw a plane go into the tower and thought, oh, that's just a plane. And then they've seen the flames, and then actually seeing bodies falling out of the building, and then another plane hitting. And all these things scar people, and the moments that these impacts take place stay with us in our bodies. And we can process things in our own way, but very often they get stored in the body, and it's not until years and years later that we realize how much they've affected us and what they've done to us, unless we've gone through therapy, or we've been able to express that sensation or what's happened. And obviously with children, it often comes out through art and therapy, talking sessions, and this is really beneficial for young children. But in the meeting that I was in earlier, we were talking about children and parenting, and what's happened since COVID, and how COVID has really impacted the children today who are 4 and 5, and parents who had to have their baby through COVID, and maybe gave birth on their own without having their partners there, didn't have the support of grandparents or friends and family that they'd normally see, and all that kind of loss of connection and being able to share what should have been like the greatest time of their lives, but not really having that support, and just kind of being lost to kind of figure everything out and what to do by themselves. And all this anxiety and everything has been feeding down into the young children that we have today, and it'll be impacting them for many years to come. So we really need to be helping these children, helping these mothers and families to reduce all this anxiety, because this is where a lot of the sleep issues are coming from, and this ADHD diagnosis, which seems to have shot up in the last few years, and all these things. Our environment really impacts us, and what happens to us as a small child can leave traumas for years and years. But in reality, every generation goes through their own traumas. I mean, the grandparents before us, they went through wars, and so they were living in terror and fear. And then we had this gap of many years of freedom, and peace, and because of the people who fought in the wars for us and for our freedom. But we're never going to be free of everything, but we need change in the world, and there's so much support that is needed for people who are suffering, who have had trauma, who have had really awful situations to deal with. And so if you are finding your child is not able to settle, they're not able to calm themselves down, you do need to spend more time with them and really ask them what's going on for them, and really take them seriously if they're upset about something. But we're also facing another danger in our society, and that is technology. And this is another killer, as far as I'm concerned, in regards to children. It's robbing children of their childhoods. And all these parents, and you may be guilty too, so are giving children way too young iPads and phones and gadgets that, to entertain their child. And this is, this is actually killing a child's imagination. It's killing their sense of well-being, and actually it makes your life harder. If you're one of these parents, it will be making your life harder, because if you're resorting to this when your child is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, and think, oh well, they're learning their numbers, they're learning ABC, it's irrelevant. They do not need it. And then you will be left dealing with the tantrums and the aftermath of that. And that is something that is avoidable. And it's really sad to see these things happening and see how parents are just giving in straight away. So there are much healthier ways to bring up your children, and we do have control of a certain amount of things. But going out with your child, I'm often witnessing children in supermarkets, in restaurants, traveling or on planes, and literally children are just creating such tantrums or crying, and as soon as they cry, they get given the technology just to get, and they immediately are quiet. But this is just fueling their behaviour. It's prolonging this behaviour. And when those children get to be 10, 15, in their 20s, they won't know how to relate to people. They won't be able to have conversations. They won't be able to converse. And they'll end up quite lonely because they're not learning vital skills. And as a parent or caregiver, I urge you to hold off giving your children technology. They don't need it. And certainly not until they're older. But if you do give it to them, and obviously you can't probably avoid it, you could if you wanted to, but if you don't, you need to limit it, and you need to teach your child what is acceptable and what isn't, and put in place some boundaries. And old school boundaries, rules worked, and they will work today. And if you don't act now to protect your child, you are going to regret it in 5 or 10 years' time. So do look after your children, support them, and know that you've got control over what they do. And it's not about giving in. This is something that you have got control of. World events we don't have control of, but if you want your child to grow up healthy and happy and be a independent human being, then we need to set good examples. And yes, it might take a little bit more effort, but parents, 10, 20 years ago, 40 years ago, had to parent their children. And that's what parents need to do today, is give their children time, and speak to them, look at them in the eye, have conversations with them, get to really know their child, and give them the love and support that they're craving. Because technology will not do that for your child. It might keep them quiet for a while, but you will pay for it in a much bigger way later. So that's enough of my rant today. But if you need some help, if you're not sure how to go about this, or you're actually experiencing a child whose behaviour you're concerned about, because this technology is addictive, you may be experiencing some difficulty removing devices from your child. If you need help, then do get in touch, and we can have a conversation. But do think twice about giving your child technology. Keep them safe. You've got to keep them emotionally safe and secure, but more than anything, it's what they're learning from the environment, and they need their brains to be working properly, and technology is not the way to do that. It will kill their imagination and their thought processes. So think twice before you give your child any technology.